Okay, guys. Again, good morning. Okay, I hope you're doing well today. Okay, so for this morning, we will be discussing about the beginning of the propaganda movement. So earlier, I showed you three different video clips about the members of the propaganda movement in the likes of Grishana de Pezaina, Marcelo H. del Pilar, and yeah, I mean, literally the propaganda movement itself, why they were even created in the first place, and how it started, and what the purpose was of the propaganda movement. Okay, now, of course, it was around 1881 when Rizal decided to continue his studies in Europe. This decision was only known to him and his brother Pasano. Okay, Rizal's parents was unaware of this decision. At that time, the family was at its most prosperous. Okay, there were no problems with the Dominican church. Okay, and Pasano during that time, if you remember our previous discussion, he was given a leeway of 5 years prior to paying his dues with the Dominicans. Okay, now, under the agreement of the Dominican administrators, no rent was to be paid for the next 5 years, from the time the lands were placed under the supervision of the Rizals or the Rizal family in 1881 up to 1887. The farms yielded very good harvests, and it provided the income to send to the young Rizal abroad to pursue his studies. That's why, if you would remember, when Rizal went to Europe, okay, and studied in the Universidad Central de Madrid, he didn't have any financial problems. Okay, everything was going well, and he was even able to fund his travel to Europe. I mean, to France, so to speak. Okay, his travels to France, and he stayed there for the whole duration of the school break. Okay. Now, Rizal left for Europe because his family had the means, and since Europe was the center of the world in scientific research and education, the educational institutions in that continent attracted the science of elite all over the world. Remember that the travel abroad is a privilege. Not all Filipinos are able to do that kasi sila yung magpa-fund sa sarili nila doon. So, most of the elite people or the upper middle class and the rich class here in the Philippines were able to go abroad. Kaya nga nagkaroon tayo ng tinatawag nating mga ilustrados, okay, or Filipinos who studied abroad. Now, Europe was also the perfect place for intellectual development of science and scientific research. The universities, museums, and libraries contain knowledge compiled throughout the ages. Course, there was also a great democratic space in Europe. Okay? Kasi this time, everything was flourishing in Europe. And one's political views are respected without fear of retaliation. Kaya nga nagustuhan ni Rizal dun eh. Kasi he doesn't have to fear kung may sasabihin man siya about the government, about the church. Everyone was open-minded into things. Okay? May makikinig talaga sa'yo. Kaya nga naisip niyang sumulat doon. Okay? Because he could freely write his articles, his essays, his poems, and everything under the sun, even his novels, without being bashed or criticized too much about the story itself. Diba? Kasi wala naman tatamaan dun eh. Hindi naman sila makarelate nun eh. All they could, his foreign readers would just be able to probably view the social conditions of the Philippines, but none of them could even relate. Kaya nga mas tinamaan ng mga praile, eh, di ba? Because they were portrayed in a different manner. Ayaw nila na ganun. Okay? Anyway, there would be no friars to challenge those advocating change in society, as well as the deputies of the reactionary Spaniard. The native Guardia Civil and the local officials who would do the bidding of their Spanish masters. Now, Europe has a great democratic space, and it gave Rizal and his companions the opportunity to compare the Philippine situation with that of Spain. So this time, Filipinos had something to compare to. Bakit ganito sa Espanya? Bakit ganito sa Pilipinas? Diba? That's why if you would recall in our previous discussion, when Rizal first traveled abroad, dinocument niya talaga lahat yon. Okay? And he even encouraged people to travel para makita nila kung ano ang nasa labas ng Pilipinas. Okay? Na, syempre, I mean, even if you travel domestically, okay lang din yun. Pero at least ba, you would have something more to hope for, something more to look forward to, something new to see. Okay? Because it's a great new world, new big world out there. Now, of course, they can make public what was happening in the Philippines and work for reforms. Kasi kung dito nila gagawin yan sa Pilipinas, kinulong na sila. Okay? Now, certainly in Spain, there would be Spaniards who would sympathize with their cause. So the purpose of writing in Spain, okay, was for the Spaniards to sympathize with them and hopefully mapakinggan yung mga hinanaing nila, the social reforms that they have been, aiming for. Pero yun nga lang, after so many years of writing and working on the propaganda movement, Rizal already saw na walang nakikinig. The Spanish crown is not listening to them. Probably people from other countries in Europe heard the cries of the Filipinos, but the Spanish crown didn't. Diba? That's why not that he completely abandoned the propaganda movement, he just retired, okay, or resigned, probably so, because he was working on his book. Okay, the book itself could be considered as a propaganda. Okay, now course, what do you think is the aim of the propaganda movement? Okay, so for the propaganda movement, the main goals of the propaganda movement was to create reforms in the Philippines. That's why they were even created in the first place. Students who created the movement wanted the Philippines to be acknowledged. Okay, acknowledged as a province of Spain. Kasi sa tagal natin under being a colony of Spain, we were never acknowledged. Okay? Acknowledged lang as a colony. Okay? But not as a province of Spain. Pag naging province ka kasi ng Spain, kung ano yung ini-enjoy ng mga tao doon, would also be enjoyed by the Filipinos. Pero yun nga lang, in our discussion about the powers of the Governor General, the Governor General can overrule the royal decree of the King of Spain. Okay? Provided na there are reasons to overrule it. And the main reason there was that if the Filipinos were given the same rights as those people in Spain, possibilities are they will revolt against the Spaniards. Ayaw nilang mangyari yun. That's why we were always, kept in the dark as much as possible. Dapat, less information, limited. Okay? Yun nga lang, since Filipinos or these ilustrados studied abroad, nagkaroon ng liberality when it comes to, thinking. Pag uwi nila, dinala nila yung mga ideas nila na natutunan, okay, from Spain, dinala nila sa Pilipinas and they applied it here. Okay? Yun nga lang, only in a limited manner. Okay? Of course, the propaganda movement, okay, has a lot of aims. Some say meron daw 7 aims ang propaganda movement. Okay? One is to secure representation of the Philippines in the Spanish Parliament, secularization of the clergy, gaya ng naging issue nung uh, Cavite Mutiny, okay? And the execution of the Gomburza, okay? Then secure equality between Spanish and Filipino people, okay? And create a public school system. Now, the movement also looked to abolish labor service, guarantee basic freedom, and lastly, offer equal opportunity for government service. Okay? Kasi walang equal opportunity for government service eh. Kung sino ang kakilala mo, siya yun. And wala pang civil service nung time na yun. You have yung ano yung magte-take ka ng exam. And if you're qualified for the government office, ayun, pwede ka nang mag-work doon. Pero hindi, there was no honesty and integrity there. Kasi wala pa mga exam-exam eh. Kung sino lang kakilala, uy, anak to ni mayor, ganun-ganun, gusto magtrabaho sa government. Papasok ka na agad. Oh. Uy, pinsan to ni ganito, ganyan. 'Di ba? So, well, it was only during the American period that the employment in government system has changed because before you would be able to apply for government office, you have to pass the civil service exam. Okay, anyway, now, of course, earlier I mentioned about Gasciano Lopezina, di ba? He spelled out the aims of the Filipino Propaganda Movement during a speech at a restaurant in Madrid in the year 1883. Okay, his friend Juan Ataide organized the said gathering and directed the Círculo Hispano-Filipino. Remember the organization for which Rizal is also a part of? Círculo Hispano-Filipino is an organization wherein Filipinos and Spaniards come together. It was only possible in Spain, but not in the Philippines. And this group, okay, the members of this group love the Philippines. Okay, even the Spaniards who never set foot in the country. Now, they advocated for peaceful reform in the Philippines, and all the members of the propaganda movement were either Filipino expatriates living in Europe or foreign sympathizers. Okay? And it was also in the propaganda movement that the Revista del Círculo Hispánico Filipino, in order to call for the reform of Spanish rule in the Philippines, was published. Okay? Yung publication na yun influenced a lot of population in Europe. Kaya nga alam na ng buong Europe ang nangyayari sa Pilipinas. But the country itself, even the Filipinos, just turned a blind eye on what's going on around them. Kasi para bang na-experience mo na, nandyan ka na, you're taking part in the social conditions, the social problems that's going on around you, pero walang nagsabi sa'yo, problema yan. So, hindi mo siya na-acknowledge na, ay, problema pala to. Okay? I hope you get the point. And yeah, for that, it also led to the Philippine Revolution of 1896. Kasi nung 1889, Lopezina wrote an article voicing his consent to revolution if hindi mangyayari yung mga peaceful reforms. Okay? So they compared the struggle of the propaganda movement to that of the French Revolution. Okay? In addition, apart from the two names mentioned, Lopezina and Del Pilar, kasali na rin doon sinali na si Jose Rizal. And of course, the historians call these two, along with Graciano Lopezina, yung tatlo ha, Jose Rizal, Graciano Lopezina, Marcelo H. Del Pilar, they are called as the great triumvirate of the propaganda movement. Okay, silang tatlo ang nag-lead ng propaganda movement, especially when they established the SOL or the La Solidaridad. Okay. Now, moving on, Rizal as the propagandist, as soon as Rizal set his foot in the foreign land, he began to note the difference in the conditions of the Philippines and of other countries. Okay. He even noted the condition of the vessels that he was sailing on. Okay. The Gemna. The vessel was larger and cleaner, its interiors were carpeted, and its toilets were excellent. When he arrived in Spain, he compared it with France, where he landed at the port of Marseille. Okay? Kasi pagdaan niya dun sa from Marseille, pupunta pa siya ng Port Bo. When he reached Port Bo, dun niya nakita yung yung French people at saka mga Spaniards. Magkaiba yung treatment nila when it comes to checking the documents of the incoming people kung papasok dun sa lugar nila. Okay. At Barcelona, he lodged in the poor part of the city, probably to conserve his meager funds. Comparing it to other European cities, his first impression of Barcelona was dark, dingy, and ugly. But this is the other side of Barcelona. When he was given the chance, or rather, when he got the chance to tour around Barcelona, he appreciated the place kasi maganda pala. Eh, parang city lang, may slums, may mga well-developed areas, 'di ba? Now, Rizal's exposure to the heady European atmosphere widened with his trip to Madrid where he enrolled at the Central Universidad de Madrid or Universidad Central de Madrid. Okay. The university was very much like the University of Santo Tomas, and the students and faculty members were a people of various beliefs. Okay, there were liberals, conservatives, monarchists, and republicans, as well as revolutionists. Now, Rizal was drawn to the side of the liberals who considered, or rather, who consisted of Spaniards and Filipinos. Okay, the house, or rather, the group started by meeting, okay, in the house of Don Pablo A. Ortiga. Or, let me correct that. Don Pablo Ortiga A. Rey. Ayun, namaliktad. Of course, he was the former alcalde of Manila. And yung Circular Hispano-Filipino dun pumupunta. Okay, almost every weekend dun sa bahay niya. Just to meet and gather. Diba? Dun din na-meet ni Rizal si, si Consuelo Ortiga Ere. Yun. Of course, the social group joined in by Rizal eventually had a name and it became known as Circulo Hispano-Filipino. Later on, Rizal composed a poem for the organization entitled Mi Piden Versos, meaning they asked me for verses. Seeing the big difference between the conditions in Europe and the Philippines, Rizal advocated changes for the country, for the Philippines. These were the reforms he and his companions would work to attain. The reforms were about human rights, freedom of speech, of religion, and of association. They would also clamor for equality before the law and the expulsion of the friars who have dominated the Philippines for so long. Kasi 'di ba nung una, when the friars started to, you know, uh, introduce the Roman Catholic religion to Christianize the natives, yun. They were doing well. Pero wala pang ano nun, wala pang union of the church and the state. Okay? Everything was working well. Yun nga lang, later on, nagkaroon ng union and union of the church and the state, doon na nag-umpisa yung problema. Okay? Because nagkaroon na ng more power ang mga friars nang dahil doon sa union of the church and the state. Okay? Thereby, they abused what power was, you know, granted to them to the point of even manipulating how the governor general would manage the Philippines, being the representative of the King of Spain. Okay. Now, for the propaganda, what do we mean when we say propaganda? Ano ba ibig sabihin ng propaganda? Okay. Propaganda is a term derived from the Latin word propagare. Okay. It means to spread or to propagate. Kaya nga, pag sinabing propaganda, there is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Okay? So, the propaganda is more on spreading of information or ideas to influence feelings or actions. Okay? Could also be the expression of opinions or actions carried out deliberately by individuals or groups. Okay? Towards an intended audience. And for the propaganda, the intended audience there was Who do you think? The Filipinos or the Spanish crown? Both. Okay? Kasi kailangan mamulat ng mga Filipinos kung anong mga nangyayari talaga sa paligid nila. As for the Spanish crown, they should know what's going on in the Philippines. That the power vested on the people that they most trusted to manage the country are abusing the power, and not only that, abusing the people, abusing the Filipinos. Okay? Of course, this is done to fulfill the objectives of the one creating the propaganda. It may use truths, lies, fictions, and opinions to achieve its items. Okay? To achieve his aims, Rizal used essays, poetry, and novels. Novels entitled No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo. It would have been nicer if he was able to finish Makamisa. Diba? But I think, for the information about the third book, he only was able to write one chapter. Okay? Anyway, it could have been like the third book of the story that would carry on in continuance to El Filibusterismo. Eh, malay mo, sa third book may mga pagbabago na dong nangyari kasi the first two had failed revolts eh. Baka sa third successful na. Anyway, we'll never know. Now, for the propaganda material, this was dished out by writers but magnified with the use of the printing press to reach a greater readership. Okay? The pen and the printing press were therefore the weapons of the propagandists. Okay? These were the most important tools that Rizal had. To the point na, yun, nagkaroon na siya ng financial problems because he was just spending his allowances and the money that he earned for, printing and other things. Akala natin nagbabiyahe siya just for the sake of, traveler lang siya. Siyempre, dual purpose yung travel niya. He was trying to learn, you know, what Europe could offer him bago pa siya makabalik ng Pilipinas. Okay? Sinulit lang niya as much as possible to the point that he was willing to sacrifice himself, his time. And supposed to be, di ba, he wished to have a family. Kaya nga gusto niya sa Pilipinas na lang. Hindi nga nangyari yun eh. Nangyari na lang when he was exiled in Dapitan. A failed attempt pa. Okay? Now, of course, Rizal was attracted to ideals of Freemasonry, and this was the role of Freemasonry and Protestantism in Rizal's life. Now, Freemasonry is a brotherhood that espoused equality among men. The Masons attacked established religions who hid the truth behind the veil of religion. Now, for this reason, the Catholic Church declared Freemasonry an evil organization. Okay, now, Rizal entered the Freemasonry in 1883 through the Lodge Acacia in Madrid and later on moved up to become a Master Mason, this time at the Lodge Solidaridad on November 15, 1890. He even gave a speech in that gathering, okay, when he became a Master Mason. His speech was about virtue, labor, and ba yung isa? Virtue, labor, yung mga to the tip of my tongue, the virtues of Freemasonry. Okay? Let me double check para sure. Science, ayun. Science, virtue, and labor. Ah, yan. Science, virtue, and labor. Yun. Ah, the duty of modern man, to my way of thinking, is to work for the redemption of humanity. Yan. Because once man is dignified, there would be less unfortunate and more happy man that is possible in life. Okay, just few words about what Rizal included in his speech. Okay, and yeah, Freemasonry changed the life of Rizal as well as his fellow Filipinos. Okay, he began to challenge the church teachings such as forgiveness of sins, the resurrection, and even the sinlessness of the Virgin Mary. Okay, he began to manifest deist beliefs. Okay, that God is not the monopoly of any religion. He is a rationalist, preferring to accept revelation only by light of reason. Okay? Kasi yung enemy naman ng people during the time of Rizal here in the Philippines is not uh, actually the church itself or the religion. It is the friars managing the church. They were using, di ba? They were using the veil of religion, okay, to corrupt the people, to abuse the people, and to manipulate everything around them for their own good. Kaya nga sabi nga nila, 'di ba, na yung mga Spaniards pupunta dito sa Pilipinas na walang dala, walang salapi, wala. Mahirap lang, mahirap. Pero pag umalis sila ng Pilipinas, after staying for quite a while, they go home to to Spain, a very rich man, 'di ba? But what happened to the Filipinos? Ang tinuro lang sa mga Filipinos is that it's easy for a poor man to enter heaven. Ah, tama ba 'yun? Binanggit ko na 'yun before, 'di ba? It's easy for I forgot that saying already. Anyone remember? Kaya nga nahihirapan I mean ano eh, anong tawag mo dito? Ito. Uh, In the words of Jesus, yan. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Okay? Pero yung pagkakabanggit naman, under the, under, I mean, in teaching the Filipinos, yun nga, dapat ko anong meron ng mga Filipinos, ibigay nila sa simbahan. So, kahit na anong kayod nila, binibigay lahat sa simbahan. Ang mga mayayaman naman, take lang ng take. Okay? Because the Filipinos believe that the more they give to the church, the more that they could enter heaven. Okay, anyway, now, of course, for Freemasonry, there was also exposure to liberal ideas. Now, Rizal's sojourn to Europe also allowed him to collect books, many of which appealed to his romantic mind, while Rizal saved food, clothes, and lived in the most Spartan accommodations. He spared no amount in buying books, even from second-hand bookstores. Kaya mas malaki yung nasisave niya. Okay, because he would buy at the bookstore of Senor Rosas, mga second-hand books lang. And he brought all these books to the Philippines when he came home. Now, for the propaganda reformist groups, the first group was the Circulo Hispano-Filipino, which existed around 1883. Filipinos also organized other groups. Rizal himself formed two groups when he went to attend the Paris exposition, di ba? The first group was Kidlat. This was formed out of impulse in 1887, and just like a lightning, it was named after the group. Immediately, it flashed out of existence. Okay, so the Kidlat members include Juan Luna, Julio Llorente, Gregorio Pauto, Baldomero Rojas, and Gregorio Aguilera. For the second group that Rizal created, it was Indios Bravos. He was inspired by the Red Indians, who showcased their talent, or not talent, their culture, yun. Their culture uh, in France, in Paris. Yun, in Paris. Kaya yun naisip niya, Indios Bravos. This was formed in 1887. Rizal intended the Indios Bravos to inspire not only the brown natives of the Philippines, but the entire Malay race. Okay? Meaning, you have to be proud. Kahit na tawagin kang Indio, you have to be proud. And you have to change the perspective on being called as an Indio. Ba, explain ko na yun sa inyo. And for this reason, he also had another subgroup created in the name of RDLM, or Redemption de los Malayos, Redemption of the Malay Race. Okay. Now, the propaganda started on June 14, 1884, when Rizal was invited to attend a banquet honoring Luna and Hidalgo, okay, who won the top prizes in the National Exposition of Fine Arts. Luna won with his Poliarium, which depicted the corpses of slain Roman gladiators being dragged into the bowels of the Colosseum, while Hidalgo won the second prize with his Virgenes Christianas expuestas al populacho. Yun. Christian virgins exposed to the populace. Actually, Luna entered the Spoliarium twice in two different occasions, okay, as his painting. And dalawang beses din nanalo ang Spoliarium. Sa National Exposition of Fine Arts and in the Paris Exposition. Okay, for the Paris Exposition, I think yun exposition na sumali din si Rizal, but he did not have a place. Okay, meaning hindi siya nanalo. Yun. But he participated. Now, in congratulating Luna, Rizal said that genius is not the monopoly of any race or any nation. The two painters who are titans of their art are both products of Spain and the Philippines, and their work united the peoples of both countries. Okay, Spain and the Philippines, because they were born in the Philippines, but they learned a lot in Spain. Doon na rin sila nag-aral. Kaya nga, even Rizal is a product of Spain and the Philippines. Now, towards the end of his speech, Rizal mentioned with refined sarcasm that the Filipinos were emerging as an intellectual force. He also said that he hoped that Spain will someday grant reforms needed by the Philippines. Yun. Para magkaroon din ng equality, okay, between the Filipinos and the Spaniards. So kung ano man ang na-enjoy ng mga ilustrados dun sa Espanya, ay ma-enjoy din ng mga Pilipino dito sa Pilipinas. Okay, now while in Europe, Rizal and his companions were thinking to write a book about the Philippines. Okay, actually, in-invite ni Rizal yun, where he met with the members of the Círculo Hispano-Filipino, and he mentioned about writing a book, okay, with it, to his companions. And the plan there was for them to also contribute in writing the book, but it ended up na it was only Rizal who wrote the book. Okay, he wrote the Noli Me Tangere and the El Filibusterismo. Noli Me Tangere was published in that year of 1857. As for his second writing of El Filibusterismo and various essays, they all appeared in the Sol, or the La Solidaridad, the newspaper of the Filipino propagandists based in Spain. Now, as a writer of the La Solidaridad, Rizal used pen names or a pseudonym, Dimasalang and Laon-Laan. Now, what does Dimasalang mean? The symbolic Dimasalang means ungraspable or untouchable. As for the Laon-Laan, means long committed to the redemption of the motherland. Okay? Now, when Rizal endeavored to write the Noli Me Tangere, he promised to write the truth about the Philippines. Okay? He wrote things that other people would not write about, comparing his work to the biblical practice of exposing a sick person on the steps of a temple, waiting for someone to suggest a cure. Okay? The fire order held political power, and they owned lands that were required by donation. Okay? Para bang may listahan ata sila ng attendance eh. Kasi alam nila kung sino ang nagbibigay sa simbahan at sinong hindi eh. And if they would like a land that you own, sasabihin lang nila, "Uy, Andre, di ka pa nagdo-donate sa simbahan." Diba? Alam na. And nobody says no to the church. When you say no to the church, ikaw ang highlight ng buong sermon. Of course, there was also purchase or outright land grabbing. The purchase would be even below the market price, to the point na hihingin pa rin nila. Okay? And if you won't give it to them, they will grab it from you. Kaya nga ang daming nagalit when we were under the American rule kasi nga prior ang plan ni Aguinaldo doon was kung ano yung mga forcibly lands that were forcibly taken by the church, ibabalik niya sa mga rightful owners. Kaso lang, nung na-colonize tayo ng mga Americans under their benevolent assimilation, hindi na nangyari yon because the Americans wanted to follow the right process or the right procedure. Okay? Bibilhin balik yung lupa from the church and then saka na, ibabay back ng mga Filipino. In the first place, lupa nila yun. Forcibly taken from them. Bakit nila bibilhin? Di ba? But anyway, as a propagandist, Rizal only showed the bad side of the Spanish rule. In his time, there was unprecedented peace in the Philippines. The Moros who used to raid Manila as late as 1825 were no more, and their threat was neutralized with the capture of Jolo in 1876, okay, and the deportation of the most notorious Moro pirate group to Isabela province in northern Luzon. The monopolies Rizal mentioned in his essays, such as the about the indolence of the Filipinos, were all gone by 1882. Okay? The galleon trade, which prevented Filipinos from trading with other countries, was abolished as early as 1815. Now, Rizal's family was actually one of the beneficiaries of free trade and the abolition of monopolies. So basically, during the time of Rizal, meron ng free trade. Businesses could operate. And there was everything was smooth flowing and the economy was working well. Yun nga lang, ang pagkaka-portray ni Rizal was that, everything was so controlled by the Spaniards that it created an effect na the Filipinos didn't had or never had any freedom of movement at all, even when it comes to their trading or business dealings. Okay? Uh, kasi matagal na na-abolish yung monopolies eh. Yung tobacco monopoly, yun. For example. Okay? Anyway, for our next discussion, we would be talking about Rizal's travels in Europe. Okay? And I think that's about it for the propaganda movement today. Okay? You guys have any questions? Okay.
None po, ma'am.
Okay. If ever man something comes up na maisip nyo, feel free to, send in the questions. Okay? I hope that this discussion enlightened your uh, knowledge, information, idea about what the propaganda movement is all about and those who took part in the propaganda movement. Okay, so prior to Rizal traveling to Europe, meron ng propaganda movement dito sa Pilipinas. Hindi nga lang siya ganun. I mean, it's active, but it wasn't like how it was when Rizal and the elites went abroad. Okay, kasi they could freely write there dito patago eh. So little is known about it. Okay? Yeah, that's it for the propaganda movement. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for your time.